7. Ice Slayer Hunting. Jin-Woo. Sung welcomed Jin-Woo with tears in her eyes. Captain.
They weren't as emotional as Sung, but the faces of the two male hunters lit up, and Jin heaved a big sigh of relief upon seeing him. Jin-Woo didn't have time to respond to his teammates' welcome, though. Sure, he placed a finger to his lips. The other four had been about to go in for a hug, but they froze.
Jin spoke first. What? That damn bastard deserved to be beaten to death. Jin-Woo glared at the unconscious Chul. He brought along some uninvited guests. He could sense numerous presences in the forest.
There was no time to consider whether Chul had led them here on purpose, because the real problem was over there.
Whom?
Sensing that Jin-Woo was aware of their presence, the Ice Slayers deactivated stealth and made themselves known.
There were around 20 of them. And with them,
Jin-Woo's eyes were fixed on a long-haired Ice Slayer riding a horse.
That's the dungeon boss.
Compared to the Ice Bears or even the other Slayers around it, the energy the boss emitted was off the charts.
If that wasn't the boss, then what else could be? For the first time in a while, Jin-Woo felt uneasy.
At the same time, the boss had also assessed Jin-Woo.
So it's true. There is treasure among the human trash. What? The boss was startled by Jin-Woo's outburst. You? Do you know our language? Jin-Woo was just as floored. How am I able to communicate with it? He understood the magic beast's language. Not only that, but he was able to speak it as well. The language he'd never learned flowed out of him as naturally as his mother tongue. You can speak their language? Jin had been flabbergasted so many times that it was par for the course by now. Her words confirmed that Jin-Woo was the only one who understood what the boss had said. Is this because of the system? Was it like an auto-translator?
Jin-Woo met the boss's gaze as it scrutinized him with interest.
We can communicate. Good. There is someone I'd like to introduce you to. The boss pointed at an Ice Slayer standing behind it. I believe you two have met before. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed.
The Ice Slayer definitely looked familiar.
That bastard is. It was the one who'd shot an arrow at Sung and mocked him. How could he forget that arrogant mug? That Ice Slayer was smiling even now. I said there was a strong one among the humans.
This one wishes to challenge you to a bat. Even before the boss finished its sentence, Night Killer was hurtling toward the Ice Slayer.
Shunk. The dagger lodged right in the middle of the Ice Slayer's face. Whoa!
The squeal came from among the hunters.
Kajung quickly covered his mouth. Whump! The Ice Slayer hit the ground.
Jin-Woo held out his hand, and Night Killer dislodged from the Slayer's face and flew back to him. He caught it in a reverse grip and lowered his stance.
Anything else to say?
The boss was impressed.
You really are strong. It got off the horse but didn't brandish a weapon or display any hostility. It continued leisurely.
But I'm sure you're aware that you wouldn't be able to defeat all of us. There were over 20 Ice Elves, and the boss was among them. The rest of the Ice Slayers were no match for Jin-Woo, who had leveled up considerably by killing Ice Bears. One of the Slayers had already died by his dagger.
How should I deal with them?
As the gears turned in his head, the boss continued.
I have a suggestion for you.
Suggestion?
That's right. It won't be such a bad deal for you. Jin-Woo was amazed.
It was well known that humanoid magic beasts had intellect, but he never thought he could make a deal with one.
Jin-Woo decided to hear it out at least. I'm listening.
The boss laughed, as if it had expected this reaction.
Let me ask you one thing. Why are you allied with these humans, even though you yourself are not one of them? Jin-Woo's brow furrowed. What the hell are you talking about? Ha ha. You weren't aware, either? The boss burst out laughing and pointed at its temple.
We hear a constant voice in our heads that tells us to kill humans.
But standing before you, I don't hear that voice. Ah. So that's what it meant? In that case, Jin-Woo had a potential explanation. When it talks about humans, it probably means hunters.
Since the underground temple, thanks to the system, Jin-Woo had become a player, so to be pedantic, he was a little different from other awakened beings called hunters.
That's why it thinks I'm not human. That made sense to Jin-Woo. As it appeared he understood, the boss nodded. We don't need to fight.
I don't want needless casualties on our side.
The boss finally got to the point. Just hand over those humans behind you. Then, I will guarantee your life. How does that sound? Jin-Woo had a question in return. Let me ask you something. Certainly. Who are you? Where are you from, and why are you trying to kill humans?
We are. Suddenly, the boss's face, smile and all, froze.
It didn't last long. The boss then relaxed its smile and spoke again. We don't need to fight.
I don't want needless casualties on our side.
What is this? Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed.
The boss had repeated the same lines, like some NPC in a game asked a question it was unable to answer.
Just hand over those humans behind you. Then, I will guarantee your life. How does that sound?
Its expression appeared unruffled, the creature apparently unaware that it was acting strange. The ice slayers behind the boss were seemingly oblivious to their boss's sudden odd behavior.
Because Jin-Woo wasn't saying anything, the boss gave him a nudge. Will you accept my offer?
Jin-Woo wanted to find out more about the magic beasts, but it was a waste of time.
Well then. The only thing left was to make a choice. His mind was already made up. No, Jin-Woo smirked. I would love your shadow, so I can't let you go.
Kill the boss and take the shadow. That had been Jin-Woo's plan from the moment he'd laid eyes on the boss, and he had no intention of changing it now.
Are you challenging my soldiers and me? You're outnumbered. Do you think you can do this alone? Jin-Woo smiled. Soldiers? You think you're the only one? I have soldiers, too.
He summoned his shadows. The minions trapped in his shadow appeared behind him in an instant.
Ah!
The scream again came from Jin-Woo's group. The shadowy bears and soldiers had materialized next to Kajun, startling him and making him trip over his feet. Jin-Woo felt bad for his teammates, whose faces had turned pale, but it was a moment of crisis, after all. There was no time to explain everything.
Well, even if there wasn't a crisis, I wouldn't explain anything to them. 29 shadow soldiers.
Jin-Woo stood before his army and glared at the boss.
Who's outnumbered now? Finally, the boss growled. Nice party trick. Fine. If you wish to die, I'll grant you that wish. The boss drew 2 daggers from its waist. This was what Jin-Woo had hoped for. Jin-Woo summoned Night Killer in his right hand and Kasaka's Venom Fong in his left. Party trick? The boss did have a point. Even though Jin-Woo had more soldiers, they weren't powerful enough to take down the boss.
Jin-Woo was well aware of this. It was likely the source of the boss's confidence.
Jin-Woo needed reinforcements. Powerful reinforcements. He did have one.
Jin-Woo looked to the side where Chul lay unconscious.
Attack, the boss yelled, and the ice slayers drew their bows. Teddy bears.
Jin-Woo positioned the shadow beasts up front.
Shunk. 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 Gra-ah.
Arrows rained down from above, and the shadow beasts who were struck cried out in pain. Before the ice slayers could fire off any more arrows, the infantry began their charge, and the mages started to cast their spells.
There was a fire in Jin-Woo's eyes. Your ass is mine.
Chul's sword had fallen behind Jin-Woo's foot, and he kicked the blade toward Chul before he took off.
His eyes were fixed on the ice slayer's boss, and it was waiting for him. Soon, sparks flew from the 4 daggers wielded by Jin-Woo and the boss. Clang! Clang! Ca clang!
The shadow soldiers and ice slayers clashed as well.
Myung-Hwan looked at Hee-Jin. Shouldn't we help? She shook her head. There's nothing we can do here.
On the battlefield were big black monsters waving their giant claws around, shadowy soldiers that respawned instantaneously, and high-rank ice slayers brandishing swords and bows.
What good are some B and C rank hunters here? All they could do was pray.
He-Jin anxiously watched Jin-Woo battle the long-haired ice slayer.
NGH. Jin-Woo cried out. His opponent was a high-rank dungeon boss, alright. It looked like an even fight, yet Jin-Woo was the only one getting nicked. Could he last 3 more minutes at this point?
His MP was quickly depleting because his soldiers had to keep reforming. Eventually, the mages completed their spell. Balls of fire larger than volleyballs dropped on the ice slayers.
Boom! The power of the leveled-up mages was extraordinary. The explosion was so loud, it roused Chul.
Chul lifted his head.
Clank! Clank! Bang!
With his blurred vision, he saw terrifying ice slayers and black knights locked in battle.
What is happening?
He didn't know what was going on, but he knew very well why he was lying there. Someone had struck him on the back of his head. That voice he'd heard behind him. It was Jin-Woo Sung. Now wide awake, he felt his hands trembling from shame and hatred, but he was able to reach for his sword. There was no way for him to survive, surrounded as he was by ice slayers.
If that was the case,
I'll take that bastard down with me. His contemptuous eyes scanned the battlefield. And there he was. Jin-Woo was fighting an ice slayer and paying no mind to what was behind him. This was his chance.
Chul stood up quickly and charged Jin-Woo. Rah! Jin-Woo sensed Chul was rushing toward them, and his mood lifted. If it's you.
Jin-Woo had predicted this was going to happen.
Chul aimed and swung his sword at Jin-Woo's neck. Eat shit.
With the boss in front of him and Chul behind, Jin-Woo shouted, Igris. Igris rushed out of Jin-Woo's shadow and blocked Chul's sword.
Clang. What? Chul's bloodshot eyes widened. But before the hunter could say anything, Igris stabbed his sword deep into Chul's chest. Shunk.
The sword pierced his chest and shot out his back.
Arf. Jin-Woo quickly withdrew a few steps. I knew this was how you'd react, Chul.
Chul was the type of person who let his emotions dictate his actions. Even though they'd interacted only briefly, it had been enough for Jin-Woo to figure him out.
Chul scowled at Jin-Woo. You.
Those were his last words, followed by his last breath. While Igris blocked the boss's path, Jin-Woo stood over Chul's shadow.
Arise. Then. Ah!
The plaintive cry was followed by a large hand bursting from the shadow.
Shadow extraction successful. Nice. Jin-Woo was pumped. The last puzzle piece had fallen into place in this boss raid.
The black knight that spawned from his shadow was much beefier than Chul himself had been. Additionally, he held a huge warhammer in one hand and a shield as tall as a grown man in the other.
The shadow exuded an immensely threatening aura.
Chul was pretty muscular, but this shadow is.
Despite the urgent situation, Jin-Woo couldn't help but be impressed. Please choose a name. Right, a name.
Jin-Woo took a peek at the battle still raging.
Igris was getting overwhelmed by the boss.
He was only meant to buy time for Jin-Woo by respawning.
SHHHK. The boss lopped off one of Igris's arms. I don't have time for this. Name. It could be anything. Should he just use Chul Kim?
Jin-Woo shook his head. He didn't feel comfortable naming the undead after a human.
Right. Chul Kim. Chul in English is iron. That would be his name.
Jin-Woo had chosen a name for the newly raised shadow soldier.
Iron LV.1, Knight rank.
That was the same rank as Igris, but Jin-Woo had no time to be pleased.
I gotta get moving.
He gestured at the boss.
Iron.
Iron's large frame lumbered forward.
Stomp, stomp, stomp.
Jin-Woo liked Iron's size but worried about how he would fare against the boss's speed. His worries didn't last.
Iron puffed his chest and let out a battle cry. Rah! What was that?
Jin-Woo flinched at the unexpected noise as a message appeared.
Ping. Iron is using skill, epic taunt. The master of the dungeon has entered a state of aggro. An aggro skill. Chul was an A-rank tank, so of course he had a high-level aggro skill.
And now Iron, who was his shadow, could mimic said skill perfectly. The boss whipped around immediately.
Even though it could have ended Igris right then and there, the boss charged Iron as if possessed. Iron used the reinforcement skill to endure the boss's dagger. Yes. Jin-Woo nodded in approval. Meanwhile, Igris's severed arm regenerated. Whom? Black smoke rose from the stump and solidified into a new arm. The boss continued to focus on Iron. Jin-Woo and Igris seized the opportunity to attack the boss together.
Hee-Jin had no words for the spectacle she was witnessing. It was incredibly surreal. She had no desire to learn more about what was happening. Next to her, Sung timidly spoke up.
Hee-Jin. The hunter belatedly answered. Yeah? Do all hunters' fights look like this? Sung's voice trembled from fright. Hee-Jin sounded defeated. If they did, I wouldn't have been able to get my hunter's license. Myung-hwan watched dazedly. Maybe, we're only dreaming all this?
If this were a dream, then it was actually a nightmare.
Hee-Jin gasped as she watched the shadowy things fight the magic beasts.
At the same time, she began to worry about something.
Once we get out of here, we'll have to talk to investigators. What were they supposed to tell people?
She couldn't even begin to explain what had happened with Jin-Woo inside the Red Gate.
After she brought this up.
But you know, Kajung was still on the ground, shaking in fear, and had trouble getting the words out.
Isn't it kind of amazing that we're actually worried about what'll happen after we leave? All the teammates nodded. A high-rank dungeon and a red gate, no less.
It was a place they'd never once thought they'd escape alive, but now they were concerned with the aftermath. It was all because of one person.
Hee-Jin turned her eyes to Jin-Woo. Thanks to you, Jin-Woo-sung.
More than shock or gratitude, she felt awe.
SHHHK. Kasaka's venom thorn was stuck in the boss's shoulder. Debuff, paralysis has been activated. Debuff has been cancelled out by the opponent's high resistance level. Debuff, drain has been activated. Debuff has been cancelled out by the opponent's high resistance level. As the enemy's levels went up, Kasaka's venom thorn's debuff failed more times than not, but the injuries it inflicted were still effective. Take that. The boss's movements slowed as its wounds piled up. NNNNGH.
The smile on its face had vanished a long time ago. The boss had been easily dodging the combined attacks of Jin-Woo, Igris, and Iron up to now, but it was starting to run out of steam.
Don't let up.
Iron grabbed the boss in a steely embrace.
Now. When Jin-Woo gave the signal, Igris and Jin-Woo retreated. The boss had a look of confusion on its face. What? The mage soldiers dropped fireballs on Iron's position. Kaboom! Boom! Arg!
The boss cried out in pain for the first time. It twisted its body, and Iron's arm fell off.
Crack! The boss turned to Jin-Woo with murder in its eyes. Gra-ah! Jin-Woo was amazed once again.
It's injured that badly, but it keeps on coming. After all, it was the master of a high-rank dungeon.
Unfortunately for it, though, they were way past the tipping point. Dagger throw.
Jin-Woo hurled Night Killer like he had at the previous Ice Slayer, but he gave it an extra push using Ruler's hand.
Whoosh! The dagger cut through the air in an instant. Ugh! Realizing it couldn't avoid the dagger in time, the boss blocked it with its own weapon. KRRRK. Because Night Killer had been thrown with such force, the boss's dagger cracked upon impact.
At the same time, Jin-Woo used stealth and dash to close the gap and thrust Kasaka's venom thong into the boss's gut.
Shunk!
The boss's eyes bulged wide in shock.
Arg!
Yet, even after all this, it grabbed Jin-Woo's wrist. It was determined to go down fighting.
Rarayaf. The boss raised its dagger above its head.
Jin-Woo smirked. An enormous warhammer struck the boss's skull.
Blam! Its head slammed into the snow covering the forest floor.
Iron lifted both his regenerated arms again and slammed the hammer down once more.
Whom? Splat!
Igris had been readying his next attack but instead sheathed his sword, and Jin-Woo put his daggers into inventory. The expected messages materialized.
Ping! You have defeated the master of the dungeon.
You have leveled up. You have leveled up.
Phew! It's finally over.
Jin-Woo exhaled in relief.
It had been a hard-fought victory.
He was just about to catch his breath when Iron caught his attention.
Hey! Hey, stop it now!
He rushed to halt Iron. The Shadow Warrior had been about to drop his hammer yet again but stopped. He was as merciless as when he had been Shul. The boss's body had already been obliterated. It's good that doesn't affect the shadow.
He smiled.
The ultimate reward for the hard battle was right under his feet. Jin-Woo murmured, "Arise."
It was already 3 a.m.
The four higher-ups monitoring the Red Gate did not look good.
Kitchell finally spoke up.
"We'll stay here, so why don't you leave first, Mr. President?"
"How could I go home while our guild members are stuck in there?" President Yunho Baek was firm. He couldn't leave them upon his honor as an active guildmaster and S-rank hunter.
Suddenly, Sung Min's eyes widened.
"Ha! The Red Gate." Kitchell and Sungchan also noticed that something odd was happening. The Red Gate is opening. The dungeon's been cleared. People are coming out.
President Baek clenched his fist tightly.
Shol Kim. Is this his handiwork? VMM. Everyone rushed up to the gate.
Baek couldn't hide his excitement and looked for Chul, the leader, but he wasn't among those who emerged from the portal.
Ha! What? That's odd.
Sungchan had also placed his confidence in Chul, and his expression grew stranger with every second.
Hunter Park. Hunter Ko and Hunter Yoon. Hunter Sung. A big smile crossed Sungmin's face as he spotted Jin-Woo with Sung-Yi trailing the three white tiger hunters. I knew it.
His smile was a sharp contrast to the stony look on Sungchan's face. But the smile quickly vanished.
The gate disappeared after only 5 hunters, including Jin-Woo, stepped through. Kitchell asked, "Did only the 5 of you make it?" Jin-Woo looked tired as he nodded affirmatively.
Kitchell was devastated.
How could this be?
He had tears in his eyes as he crossed out the names of the dead on his list. Baek, who was watching this all happen, let out a cry.
Only the low-rank hunters survived? Only a single B rank came back? This was impossible. What had happened inside that gate? Let's go. I'll take you home.
Jin-Woo was about to leave with Sony when the president grabbed his wrist.
Wait a second, sir. Smack. Jin-Woo snatched his arm back.
Baek's gaze sharpened.
Let's talk for a second. Jin-Woo turned around. I'm tired now. If you have any questions, please ask your guild members. Baek couldn't stand it anymore and finally revealed his identity.
I'm Yunho Baek, the guild master of the White Tiger Guild. Jinwoo's eyes remained cold.
And? Jinwoo's frosty reception caused Baek's eyes to transform into those of a magic beast.
They looked completely feral. We lost 9 of our guild members from this incident.
Don't I have a right to ask you a few questions as the president of the guild? This wasn't a request. It was an order, or perhaps a threat.
Whatever one wanted to call it, Baek had no intention of letting Jin-Woo go just like that.
But Jin-Woo looked pissed. He didn't cower at the immense pressure exuding from S-rank hunter Yunho Baek. I saved 3 of your people. As the president, shouldn't you start by thanking me?
The tables had turned, and it was Baek who now felt the weight of Jinwoo's anger. Everything Jin-Woo said was right, after all. He couldn't argue with that.
I apologize. Yunho gave a repentant bow.
Jin-Woo turned to leave.
Let's go, Sung-Yi.
Okay. Sung-Yi peeked at Jinwoo's expression as she followed him, so as to not irritate him more.
Eventually, they got in the van and left. This doesn't make sense. Yunho's thoughts were all jumbled.
He sprinted over to Hee-jin, the only surviving high-rank hunter.
Excuse me, Hee-jin.
She was warming up with some tea Kitchell had brought her.
What's with that guy? Why is he in such a bad mood?
They had escaped from a red gate after overcoming untold hardship, so why was he acting so savage? Hee-jin shook her head, indicating she had no idea.
I don't know, sir.
After he defeated the boss, he muttered something 3 times while he stood in front of the corpse.
He's been acting that way ever since, so he was fine until then? She looked at Myung-hwan and Kajong.
They simultaneously nodded. What a strange man he is, Yunho mumbled to himself as he looked at the alley Jin-Woo had driven down. Sangmin started wringing his hands like it was all his fault.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. He was probably exhausted. He isn't a bad person, from what I've seen. No, that's not the problem. Pardon me? Yunho looked sternly at Sangmin. Why haven't you recruited him yet? Sir? Sangmin couldn't hide that he was flustered, but what he felt couldn't compare to Yunho's vexation. Against me.
The president swallowed hard as he recalled Jinwoo's cold eyes.
Gulp.
A thought occurred to him that he would be resigned to losing at least one arm in a fight against Jin-Woo.
Possibly more than just an arm.
Realizing what Yunho meant, Sangmin replied hastily.
I'm doing my best, sir. Well, it's not good enough. Yunho's eyes shined. Jin-Woo sung.
Clearly, Managerin had picked another winner. Use whatever resources you need. Make him a part of our guild at any cost.
On the way home. Vroom.
A bitter taste filled Jinwoo's mouth.
Ha!
Unfortunately, he had failed to extract the Ice Slayer boss's shadow.
Was it because the difference between his and the boss's abilities was too great? It sucks, but there's nothing I can do.
There would be plenty of high-rank bosses. What was important now was increasing his abilities so he wouldn't miss out on another opportunity like that again.
Leveling up.
That was what Jin-Woo did best.
Also,
he took his left hand off the wheel for a second, and a beautifully curved dagger appeared. Item, Barca's Dagger, Acquisition Difficulty, a category, Dagger, a dagger used by the great warrior Barca. A powerful spell of weightlessness imbued in the dagger allows the user to be more agile while wielding it.
Attack power plus 110, agility plus 10. At least he hadn't walked away completely empty-handed.
This was one of the 2 daggers the boss had used. He disposed of the damaged dagger and kept this one. Barca's Dagger. It not only packed a powerful attack but also boosted agility. It was a superior dagger compared to both the C-rank Kasaka's Venom Fong and the B-rank Night Killer, which he'd spent so much money on.
The acquisition difficulty was a rank as well.
It was the ideal weapon to replace Kasaka's Venom Fong, which was proving less and less effective as of late.
It even feels good in my hand.
Jin-Woo was recounting the events of the Red Gate as they pulled up to Sung-Yi's apartment building.
Screech.
Sung-Yi, who had sat so quietly that it was like she wasn't even there, got out of the front passenger seat and bowed.
Have a safe drive. Right. She turned around.
Looking at the way her shoulders slumped and how she was trudging to the door, Jin-Woo felt he had achieved his goal. Things got complicated, but it was all about convincing Sung-Yi.
She appeared to no longer want to be a hunter.
It would be the same for anyone whose first dungeon experience involved a red gate. Jin-Woo was satisfied with himself and was about to start the van when the passenger side door suddenly opened.
Jin-Woo looked over. Sung-Yi had returned and was holding open the door. What's she doing? He didn't have to wait long. She politely bowed once again. Thank you for everything, Jin-Woo.
Sometime while in the red gate, she'd stopped calling him Mr.
Yeah, Sure. Hmm. See you tomorrow. Well, in a few hours. A few hours? He eventually realized what Sony meant after she was out of sight. Ah.
Starting today, Jin-Woo had to finish the rest of the raids with Jinho. He was going to see her again because she was a member of the squad.
That's what she was talking about.
He was relieved. Had Sonya refused to leave home because of this incident, it would have seriously messed up his schedule.
This turned out well. Now Jin-Woo could clear C-rank dungeons even faster using his shadow soldiers.
He was confident he'd complete the rest of the raids in record time. Besides, he was looking forward to seeing Jinho's reaction when faced with the shadow soldiers for the first time.
It can't beat Kijun's reaction, though.
Jin-Woo chuckled as he slowly turned the corner.
The following morning. Yan'an.
Jin-Woo was still sleepy as he made his way to the lobby of his apartment building. It felt like he'd blinked and it was already time to work.
Good morning, boss. Jinho gave an enthusiastic greeting. How did you get here without your van?
Jin-Woo had used the team's trusty van yesterday, so it was parked in a lot nearby.
I took a taxi, boss. Ah, I see.
So much for his plans to be the one to pick Jinho up.
That's okay, boss.
You're already doing plenty for me, so I should at least be the one driving, Jinho replied with a laugh.
It was a typical morning, except. Ha!
Jinho noticed the cylindrical object in Jinwoo's hand.
It piqued his curiosity. What's that, boss? Oh, this?
Jinwoo grinned mischievously.
Something I'll need in the dungeon today. Ha!
At that moment, Jinho felt a chill run up his spine.
Is that a weapon he'll use in the dungeon? Jinwoo was already overpowered, so what frightening new weapon was this? Jinho felt anxious. Gulp.
He took a breath to calm down and nodded.
Okay, boss, let's go. Hold on. Jinwoo pulled out his phone and made a call. We need to pick someone up. What? Who? Hey, Songy. Meet us downstairs, we'll give you a ride. Songy. Was that? As soon as Jinwoo hung up the phone, Jinho pounced. Are we picking up that high school girl in our squad?
Jinwoo nodded in confirmation. Songy's apartment was on their way, so he figured they might as well pick her up.
But Jinho read more into it. Songy Han.
She was the cute high schooler who always wore her hair in a bun. He knows her phone number and was all friendly with her.
Are they already that close?
Jinwoo was impressive even from a guy's point of view. Especially when he only uses a dagger to take on a monster, he really is. The boss might not be interested in her, but it wouldn't be surprising to discover that she was crushing on Jinwoo.
Jinho nodded.
He was determined to get verification.
So, boss. Should I refer to Sonny as ma'am from now on? Did he eat something weird during breakfast? Jinwoo's reaction was asking as much. Though usually clueless, Jinho understood the hunter's expression this time. So you two aren't dating? She's just my sister's friend. Oh. That explained it.
Jinho finally grasped the reality of the situation.
And to think he'd been about to call her ma'am. He was so embarrassed. Eventually, Songy emerged, more dressed up than usual. Jinho grinned.
Okay, so she's a teenage girl with a crush on her friend's older brother. As squad leader, he thought he should compliment her nice outfit, but Jinwoo greeted her first.
Did you get any sleep? Jinho froze. Songy smiled as she shook her head. Not at all. Take a nap in the van. You must be tired. Jinho couldn't follow their conversation. Ha? It was Songy's turn to ask in return, what about you, Jinwoo? I just took a light nap. It was past 4 by the time I got home. I see, night? Not a wink? Tired? Past 4 by the time he got home? Jinho was freaking out by now.
Jin-Woo had started heading to the van but stopped to look back at Jin-Ho.
Jin-Ho, let's go. I? Boss? Sonny is a minor, boss. Yeah, and? Nothing, boss. What a man among men. Jin-Ho was amazed that Jin-Woo refused to be shackled by society's rules. He really isn't an average guy, that's for sure. Jin-Ho reflected on himself for ever measuring Jin-Woo against typical societal standards. Meanwhile, in a small meeting room at the White Tiger Guild. That's all I know. Hee-jin ended her statement.
Although President Baek had recommended she get some rest first, Hee-jin had insisted that she had gotten plenty of rest inside the Red Gate and wanted the investigation to start immediately. The two leading the inquiry, President Baek and Manager An, were speechless. Kitchell, who had been in charge of the raid, was currently at the association to follow up on how to handle the situation, so it was only the three of them in the room.
Sangmin broke the silence. Is all of this true? You can ask Myung-hwan and Kajung. They'll tell you the same thing.
The two men had gone straight home, saying they missed their families.
Hee-jin guaranteed that their testimonies would be no different from hers.
I only told them what I saw with my own eyes. For example, she told them she'd hear ice bears screaming in the distance inside the forest whenever Jin-Woo wasn't with them, and she'd see him get up at night to do push-ups while everyone else was asleep. She said nothing about what the others had seen or heard, only things she'd witnessed herself.
HNGH, Sangmin made a sound that could have been a gasp or a groan.
Jin-Woo could knock out an A-rank hunter with one punch, manipulate space as he wished, and summon a few dozen of his own soldiers.
It was all hard to believe, but the most shocking thing was.
President Baek broke his silence and stated, Jin-Woo Sung cleared a high-rank dungeon almost entirely by himself.
It was very possible he was an S-rank hunter. Incredible.
Even though he'd fought alongside minions he'd summoned, they were not his partners but rather part of Jin-Woo's skill. Which was to say, Jin-Woo truly had solo cleared the dungeon.
Even if you're a very high-rank hunter, it's extremely difficult to clear a dungeon on your own.
On top of that, it had been a red gate. On his own, Baek might be able to clear a B-rank gate. Jin-Woo's feat was possible only because he had the means to summon a large number of his own soldiers.
Sangmin marveled, Jin-Woo is definitely an awakened being with rare abilities. Yun-ho agreed.
It's unusual enough for a hunter to be able to control one summoned creature, but one who can summon a whole army of them. Since becoming an active S-rank hunter, Yun-ho had met countless other skilled hunters, but he'd never heard of that kind of skill. He's an awakened being with skills on a completely different level. The president was truly amazed.
A question suddenly popped into Songmin's head. In terms of net worth, how valuable is Jin-Woo now? Yun-ho had no answer.
But one thing was clear. Whatever Jin-Woo was worth right now, his value would increase exponentially as soon as he was re-evaluated, which was why they needed to recruit him before then.
The White Tiger Guild had already lost an A-rank and several B-rank hunters. If they couldn't recruit Jin-Woo, who was a great boon, the loss would be immeasurable. I have faith in you, Manager An. As President Baek sent him a trusting look, Songmin's face filled with determination. Just then. Both Yun-ho and Sangmin looked over to Hee-jin. She was holding up her hand. President Baek asked, "Did you have a question?"
Now that she had their attention, she put down her hand. Please let me help you.
With what?
With recruiting our Hunter Jin-Woo Sung.
Yun-ho and Sangmin exchanged looks before turning back to Hee-jin again. Sangmin, the one in charge of recruitment, cocked his head. But why would you?
Because I've spent more time with him than anyone in our guild, so I think I can help. Although it had only been 6 hours in real time, she'd spent almost a week with Jin-Woo in the Red Gate.
It was a reasonable suggestion.
It didn't hurt that she was also attractive, which could be a useful tool for recruitment. As soon as Hee-jin sensed that they were about to cave, she added, "There's one condition, though."
Baek raised an eyebrow. What is it?
If Jin-Woo joins the White Tiger Guild, please put me in his strike squad, no questions asked. She'd had a revelation about just how horrifying high-rank gates were and how powerless she could be once inside.
It's what Jin-Woo was trying to teach Sung-Yi. It was humiliating, but what could she do? Pretending that something scary wasn't actually scary was dumb and reckless. What she'd experienced inside the Red Gate had certainly been terrifying. However, she couldn't give up the spoils and status she enjoyed as a B-rank hunter. The high annual salary. The countless benefits. The social recognition. Despite the risk, it was the perfect occupation. After all, it was high risk and high return. But Hee-jin had discovered a way to mitigate that risk. Raids with the captain. The person she'd envied the most inside the Red Gate was none other than Sung-Yi, and it was for one reason only. It was because of something Jin-Woo had promised her. I brought you here, so I promised to take responsibility and protect you. In other words, he wasn't responsible for protecting any members other than Sung-Yi. The rest of them were just extras. The whole time they were together, Hee-jin had worried that Jin-Woo and Sung-Yi would secretly leave the party. And then on the 6th day, Jin-Woo really had cleared the high-rank dungeon by himself and sent Sung-Yi Han home safely. He'd kept his promise. After witnessing all that, Hee-jin was convinced. If she went on raids in Jin-Woo's squad, she would always be safe. Just the thought made her heart race. He was calm, cool, and collected, had amazing abilities, and carried a sense of responsibility. She wanted her next raid to be with Jin-Woo again, so that was her sole demand. Put me in the strike squad led by Jin-Woo Sung. President Baek and Sang-min discussed the matter, and then. Sounds good. President Baek guffawed. So for now, you will work with Managerin. Thank you. Scouting Jin-Woo wouldn't be easy, that's for sure. Jin-Woo was well aware of how valuable his abilities were. Even inside the Red Gate, he overflowed with confidence. Convincing him to join the guild wasn't going to be easy. Still, she'd have a chance to see him again. Hee-jin hid her smile from the others. President Baek was lost in his thoughts but finally decided to ask. Managerin. Yes? I would like Jinwoo's number, please. Sir, that's, Sang-min explained to President Baek why he'd been hiding Jin-Woo. Yun-ho molded over, then nodded in understanding. I get why he wants to hide his abilities, even though he's so great. Some people in the world just want to go unnoticed. A man with that kind of personality had just revealed his secret abilities in front of other people. Of course, he'd been in a dangerous situation, but it most likely meant that he was also self-assured enough to slowly reveal himself to the world. As long as things don't blow up, Jin-Woo can't blame you, Managerin. Sang-min nodded. Of course, he had no intention of leaking this story. Not only would that cause problems for Jin-Woo, but the news wouldn't benefit either the guild or to the association. That's true, but Sang-min was worried about something else. His boss could ruin everything by rushing into things without knowing Jin-Woo's firm nature. Sang-min wanted to prevent that from happening. Sir, I don't think contacting him directly yourself is, Yun-ho realized what concerns Sang-min. Oh, it's not about recruitment. Sorry? Then why? It's like Jin-Woo said. Yun-ho had realized something while listening to Hee-jin's statement. The White Tiger Guild owed Jin-Woo. He'd saved 3 of their new recruits. Moreover, he'd stopped the White Tiger Guild's name from being tarnished by clearing the Red Gate. Even though it had been the association's mistake, their public image would have taken a dive if news regarding the loss of their recruits had gotten out. Just thinking about the possibility was awful and gave him chills. And despite that, I tried to interrogate him. Yun-ho now understood why Jin-Woo had been so sour. He hadn't realized it at the time, but now that he was aware, he wanted to do something about it. As the president of the White Tiger Guild, I would like to officially thank Hunter Sung as well as apologize to him about yesterday. Oh, well, if that's the case. His words won over Sang-min. Knowing the president's straightforward personality, he wouldn't thank Jin-Woo just to turn around and try to recruit him. Not to mention, Sang-min also wanted to thank Jin-Woo. Okay, then. Sang-min pulled out his phone and looked for Jin-Woo's contact info. What's Jin-Woo's number? President Baek also took out his phone to enter Jin-Woo's number.
The number is. Sangmin stopped because he felt an intense pressure, and he turned his head.
And why do you need it, Hunter Park?
Ah, right, Hee-jin smiled awkwardly and furtively hid her phone, which was open to the Add New Contact page. The Hunters, Korea's #1 guild.
Its president, an active S-rank hunter named Jongin Choi, had just been delivered some interesting news. Has this been confirmed? No one would dare knock on his door to bring him misinformation.
Myunki Jo, director of their recruiting team, nodded.
Yes, I received this intel from the association today. All the large guilds had their own informants within the association.
It wasn't something to be proud of, but this was how they got the jump on contacting high-rank awakened beings before anyone else. But their informant had told him something odd today.
Only after agonizing over it had Myunki gone to the president's office.
Since this is about White Tiger, the guild threatening our spot at the top, he thought it was worth reporting to the president.
As Myunki had expected, Jongin was very interested. 2 C-rank hunters survived a red gate where an A-rank and 6 B-rank hunters got killed? And they cleared the gate? This doesn't make sense. Even with that B-rank hunter. Jongin shook his head as he read the memo. There must have been someone else not mentioned in this memo. He was certain of it. His extensive track record and experience with raids told him as much. Myunki continued.
The association suspected this as well.
However, White Tiger wouldn't talk. So the association let it go, just like that?
Since the incident was the association's fault, they didn't want to make a big deal out of it.
Jongin tapped his chin.
It was a force of habit, something he did when lost in thought.
Never mind the association, why was White Tiger being quiet? There could be only one reason. White Tiger got help from someone they don't want anyone else knowing about. I agree with you.
They shared the same opinion.
Jongin's mind began to race.
A nameless supporter who saved the low-rank hunters from a difficult dungeon where many high-rank hunters were killed. He was dying for some answers.
Is it a new hunter who has yet to be diagnosed as an awakened being? Or a criminal whose identity needed to be concealed? It didn't matter either way. If this was a new hunter, the hunters would recruit them. If it was a criminal, the hunters would ruin White Tiger's reputation. Jongin's eyes twinkled. We need to find out who was there. Do you have any ideas?
You have to set a fire in the raccoon's den to catch the raccoon.
Myunki's eyes lit up. Are you going to set White Tiger on fire? You think I'm crazy?
Why would I set fire to someone else's property?
Apologies.
I just thought, since you're such an amazing mage hunter, he was known as the ultimate hunter for a reason. If Jongin used his skills at full blast, blowing up a building would be like knocking down a house of cards.
Jongin explained. That's not what I mean.
I'm saying we need to cause some trouble. So that's the fire. Jongin's gaze turned fierce, and Myunki quieted.
Let's leak something to the media. Brilliant. Myunki looked impressed.
The Hunters Association's big mistake.
The tragedy of a large guild. And the mystery behind it all. Wouldn't the press eat that up? Myunki nodded automatically. Jongin laughed.
If the White Tiger Guild is ambushed by the media, they'll have no choice but to reveal the mystery hunter.
That's such a good idea. Myunki laughed with him.
It was an excellent chance to deliver a huge blow to the White Tiger Guild, which had been hot on the hunters' heels.
Jongin couldn't suppress his smile. Call the reporters immediately. You have entered the dungeon. Jin-Woo took a deep breath as soon as he was inside. Ha!
After being trapped in an outdoor-type dungeon for several days, the air in a cave-type dungeon felt different.
Soon, Jin-Ho entered as well. What kind of magic beasts do you think we'll run into here, boss?
Who knows, I sensed something nearby, but...
Jin-Woo felt their presence but didn't see anything.
He took a step forward. The floor of the cave began to rise here and there.
Th thud. Th thud.
They were humanoid magic beasts made of stone.
Jinho recalled hearing about them. Boss, these are stonemen.
Jin-Woo acknowledged him with a nod. These bastards were known for having the toughest hides among magic beasts found in low-ranked dungeons. Conventional wisdom said to use magic to defeat stonemen, but
hang on to this for me.
Jin-Woo handed Jinho a plastic bag containing the cylinder and then walked toward the stonemen.
Gasp.
Jinho flinched, convinced the bag held some kind of weapon, but nothing happened.
Is it not a weapon?
In the meantime, Jin-Woo equipped Barca's dagger and night killer.
Shunk. The head of a stoneman rolled away.
Jin-Woo admired Barca's dagger with a pleased grin.
Not bad. Suddenly, Jin-Woo disappeared from view. TMP 10 or so stonemen fell to the ground just before Jin-Woo reappeared behind them. Cruumble.
I feel so much lighter and faster on my feet since I got out of the red gate.
That was only natural, as Jinwoo's current level was 60.
After defeating Ice Bears and Ice Slayers, he'd leveled up 9 times, from level 51 to level 60. Now, C-rank magic beasts felt like the goblins found in E-rank dungeons.
I don't even think I need weapons here. That was good enough for a warm-up. Should I speed things up, then?
It was time to summon his shadow soldiers. As if on cue, a group of stonemen came lumbering toward them from inside the cave.
Summon. With his order, shadow soldiers hidden within Jinwoo's shadow quietly formed behind him.
This was followed by a scream of terror.
Gaiaha! Oh, right.
Jinwoo smacked his own forehead and turned around.
He's here, too.
Jinwoo had been having so much fun that he'd forgotten Jinho was with him.
BB boss?
From where he'd fallen on the ground, Jinho pointed at the shadow soldiers.
What are these?
It's too complicated to explain, but it's one of my skills.
You have the SS skill to summon these things?
Jinwoo replied with a nod.
Jinho couldn't close his mouth. Ah, this was Jinho's 11th dive into a dungeon with Jinwoo.
He'd thought himself incapable of being surprised by now, but clearly, he was wrong. Jinwoo had exceeded his expectations once again.
Gulp.
Jinho had trouble swallowing as he eyed the soldiers in their black armor emitting savage energy.
Jinwoo glanced in the other direction.
The slow-moving stonemen had gotten closer. Jinwoo directed the soldiers at the beasts.
Go. His minions bolted as if they'd been waiting for his cue. TH thud.
Because almost 40 soldiers moved at once, the floor of the cave quaked. Thanks to the addition of bigger shadow soldiers like Iron and the shadow beasts, the overall weight of the army had increased significantly.
It's like I'm looking at a squadron of tanks. Jinwoo wore a satisfied look on his face.
The soldiers stormed the place, and the dungeon was cleared in no time. All that was left were the remains of the stonemen, which sort of resembled cookie crumbs.
A C-rank dungeon decimated, just like that. Whoa. Jinwoo was impressed. If I keep this up, we'll complete the rest of the raids in a snap. It shouldn't take too long to finish the remaining 8. TMP.
At the end of the battle, the shadow soldiers assigned to collect essence stones stood at attention before Jinwoo. Igris and Iron, the 2 knight ranks, were positioned at the front. Once all the soldiers stopped moving, Jinho sheepishly made his way to Jinwoo's side.
Here, boss.
Jinho returned the plastic bag Jinwoo had given him earlier. Jinwoo grabbed the travel mug out of the bag and took a sip.
What's that, boss?
Vegetable juice.
Ah, I tried it recently, and it's pretty good.
Slurp, slurp, slurp. When the mug was almost empty, Jinwoo turned to Jinho.
How many gates did you book today?
Jinho was cautiously trying to touch the fur of a shadow beast but stopped and turned to Jinwoo.
4 in total. That would leave 5 more dungeons if he did 4 today. There was no need to drag this out longer. Okay, let's wrap everything up by tomorrow, even if it means we have to travel far. Tomorrow? Jinho inspected his surroundings.
He saw the stonemen's remains scattered everywhere.
If he keeps going at this speed, there won't be any issues. You got it, boss.
By the way, Jin-Ho hesitated a bit before continuing.
Is it okay if I'm the one who collects essence stones? Why? It kinda feels like they've stolen my place, boss. It's a little upsetting. Jin-Woo burst out laughing. He's special for sure. And finally, the next day,
Jin-Woo fulfilled his promise to Jin-Ho and completed all 19 raids.